If I could put my finger on one of the worst problems in the American political process right now, it is a problem that transcends one party. It is a problem of both parties. It's not the consultants. It's not the duopoly. It's not the ballot access. It's not the donors. It's not the campaign access. We have a lot of people involved in the process who have only been involved in that process. When you look at some of the best candidates or best politicians in America, they are people who were not always in politics, but had lived experience elsewhere and then got into politics. Some of the worst politicians in America are the creatures of politics who have always been political. And unfortunately for the country right now, both parties are so attuned to things that happen online and the loud voices in the room that build up social media followings, and many of those people have no lived experience. I don't believe you have to walk in someone's shoes to understand them necessarily. I don't believe you have to be a member of a demographic category in order to comment on that demographic category. And I don't believe you need credentials. There are a lot of idiots out there with PhDs. But it would be nice if the parties, instead of listening to the loud 20 and 30-something single people on Twitter on how to align with the working class or with families, would actually listen to the working class and families. It would be nice if the young kids who have developed their followings on social media by being political brain biblical donkeys would actually go out, start a family, get a job in the real world, learn to live life, experience life, and then decide they're going to pontificate about life. I'm always amazed these days at the number of single 20 and 30-somethings in the Democratic Party who've decided that they know enough in their life to be able to set public policy for the rest of us, and inevitably it descends into live like me. I mentioned the other day there was this urban planning idiot on social media who was venting about in-unit washers and dryers and how it was bad for the environment, it was bad for water, it was bad for people, and no one needs to have an in-apartment built in a washer and dryer. The fact that people don't want to move into apartments without them is just something bad, and they should be discouraged. And this is a 20-something who pontificated that he doesn't know anybody who has to do laundry every day. You can do it at the end of a week or every 2 weeks and hang out for 90 minutes in a laundromat and be fine. And this is a childless 20-something. When he has kids, he will realize you do laundry every day. My gosh, my wife is a saint. She does laundry every single day. She keeps it moving. She's got a rhythm and a routine. But we're getting this on the right as well. You've got a bunch of rich white kids who really haven't had any job. They went from law school straight into pontificating about politics around the country. And I mean, get married and have kids before you start talking to me about the working class and connecting to families and family policy. And the people who want to perform on social media, they want to be some level of thought leader. Look, I get it. I mean, we've had some thought leaders in this country who've run us off the rails, but come on, people. Live a little first. Get out of politics. I find that the people who are the happiest, the people who have the best sense of where things should go in this country, whether on the left or the right, are the people who got into politics later, not the people who started in politics. So I was the chairman of the college Republicans at my university. I started the college Republicans at my university, became the statewide chairman of the college Republicans. I was the last chairman of the Georgia Federation of College Republicans in Georgia, the first chairman of the Georgia Association of College Republicans. And I just noticed you could pick the kids out who their entire life revolved around politics. And I treated them a little, even though I'm in the college Republicans, treated them a little skeptically. I mean, get a life. There are too many people who, they don't have, their entire circle of friends is revolved around politics and the political movement. Live a little bit. And I do think that both parties would be better off and more realistic in their expectations if they did something like that. It's kind of dumb to me to watch people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez try to pontificate on what we need to do for the working class. Likewise, it's kind of dumb to see some of these rich kids at think tanks on the right do the same. It's like I'm developing a pet peeve. I don't know that it's officially a pet peeve now, but there are a lot of graceless Christians on social media now. I call them the Theo Bros, who they want to go after people like Tim Keller because, well, theologically, he's absolutely in the right. Some of his views are not necessarily what they wish he would say. And I mean, I don't agree with him on everything, but he's also been a pastor. And I think that the guys who have come through or starting out or in the middle of seminary and they're going after pastors who they think are doing things wrong, maybe go pastor a church before you start telling pastors they need to pastor differently. You don't have to live in their shoes. You don't have to have done their job to tell them what to do. That's not my point. My point, though, is you should exercise some level of humility before you do. You should maybe wonder, why are they doing this? Are they theologically wrong? No. Well, am I going to lecture them when they're pastoring a church of a diverse array of people? There's a lack of humility across both sides of the aisle and into theologians on Twitter. I guess Twitter takes off the humility. And I do think you need to have some level of humility before you start telling the working class we're coming for you. It's like I always say, the Republican groups who want to go into the Hispanic community, they get some white dude to go in and say, "Hola, mi amigos." It's immediately like, this isn't authentic. How can we relate to this guy? Get some people who can relate. And again, like Stacey Abrams, when she was on the campaign trail, pontificated that abortion is an economic issue for families. And based on her logic, she can't tell me what's good and wrong for families because she doesn't have one. What was funny is I put that clip on social media and a bunch of progressives got mad at me. Well, you're not a woman. You can't comment. It's like, that was my point exactly. That you should be able to comment on families, and you should be able to comment as a man on women's issues and as a woman on men's issues. But Stacey Abrams in the left's position is, unless you are in this group, you can't comment about this group. And here she is telling people what's good for families when she doesn't have one. I agree she should be able to, but her position is you shouldn't. I don't think you have to be in the working class to talk about the working class. What I do think is it would help you a lot if you kind of understood the working class before you pontificated on the working class. Before you start lecturing people on how to make a payroll, maybe you should have tried to make a payroll. Before you start telling small businessmen how to run their lives, maybe you should. You know, I am in the midst with my business of having finally to be able to get healthcare benefits for my employees. And it is absurd. And I really feel more and more strongly what I felt before, and now I'm just confirmed, and talking to all the insurance people, absolutely confirmed it, that the people in this country, in Washington, and Congress, and the regulators who set the laws and regulations on insurance had no idea what small businesses dealt with. And they decided to make their lives better without understanding any of their problems, and they've wound up making everything worse. It is a complicated, screwed up mess. And I found a solution, finally, with a lot of people helping me get there. But the regulations and the laws and stuff make it all convoluted. And you can clearly tell more and more that people in Washington who set the policies to improve people's lives actually make their lives worse because they have no idea what the hell they're talking about. They don't have any lived experience, nor do they relate to any of the people who lived that experience. So there's no way for them to learn. People need to learn what life is like for other people. One of the most miserable experiences of my life that I hope to never repeat again, that helped shape me in a way that I would probably be a far worse human being had I never gone through, was being forced for 5 whole years to do indigent criminal defense. In the county where I practice law, if I wanted to practice law, I was required to represent indigent criminal defendants against my will. Did not want to do it. Thought it was a violation of the 13th Amendment. They didn't care. If I wanted to practice law in the county, I had to. And it was miserable, and it was deeply rewarding. And I learned a whole lot about people who were not like me. I did not live their life and I did not walk in their shoes, but I had to figure out a way to relate to the poor black young man who in a neighborhood was induced to be in a gang because he had no dad. His mom was never home and he needed some level of protection, and he found it in a gang. Or the woman who got addicted to drugs, so much so she was prostituting herself and stealing from her husband until he divorced her. And she was going to die and needed to be out of jail for Christmas where she could die. You learn about life like that, it's really harder to see a lot of things in black and white that you want to see in black and white. And I have a lot of friends on the left and on the right who see a lot of things in black and white, and they get mad at me for saying, well, the situation may be more nuanced. I may agree with you, but the situation is more complicated than you claim. I may agree with your policy, but you should acknowledge the complications of the situation. And that ultimately, I think, is where it comes from when I have people, friends of mine, say, you're just not as conservative as you used to be. Listen, I'm as conservative as I always was on every issue. I just recognize now in ways I did not when I was younger, when I was so focused on defining myself on social media until I very literally nearly died, that life actually can be rather complicated. The nuts and bolts of life can be very simple and we try to complicate it, but then there are complicated things we try to simplify. And sometimes it takes discernment, age, and wisdom through trials of life to discern the simple and the complex. And too many people who set our public policies don't understand that. They don't understand each other. They don't understand the other side of the aisle. They don't understand the people they try to represent. And we're left with the loudest, youthful voices on Twitter trying to get attention, telling us things are so when they aren't, but they draw people in. They build up their audience, and they can't walk away from it. And I find it all very deeply destructive. I would really, really like it if the Republican Party and the conservative movement maybe stopped listening to the loudest voices online and started listening to the people who don't have to have lived an experience, but at least relate enough to those who do that they actually can set sound public policy. And we can leave it to the progressives to pontificate on public policy without ever knowing anyone who's actually affected by their policies. Then everyone would vote for our side.